DRA Global is a leading international engineering, project delivery and operations management group with an impressive track record spanning more than 3 decades. DRA Global's team of experts drive innovation through world-class consulting services and support clients across multiple sectors to achieve their goals in minerals and metals processing, mining, infrastructure, energy, water, industrial, operations, maintenance and shutdown services.
Welcome everyone. We've got a fantastic panel ahead of us today, talking around some of the challenges and opportunities in digital mining and some of the emerging technologies in support of sustainable mining, such as electrification. So to set the scene for the discussion, I thought it worthwhile to contextualise, if you like, the challenges in the mining industry and how we're needing to change, I guess, our operating paradigm to manage certain disruptive forces. And so I've drafted a double-axis graph to represent something complex simply, I guess, and that being that it's really becoming more apparent that digitalisation and sustainability are becoming inextricably linked. And, you know, it's our belief that they will become golden threads through everything we do if we're to succeed and attain sustainable business and importantly, competitive advantage. And I think the other factor is that investments in both are critical, and in doing so to support really the bigger agenda items in mining, such as securing long-term investment and deliver on the capital agenda required to meet the future global demand that is apparent within the mining industry. So in the panel today, we'll explore certain discussions around 3 core areas about how we might work more closely with our collective industry partners to address really a fast closing but still apparent gap between the brand of mining and the benefits that mining really does deliver to our sustainable future. And principally, this will be bracketed around 3 core questions. One around the scope and understanding of really what is digitalisation, what is digital mining, how does digital mining start to support some of the initiatives we're seeing emerging, such as electrification towards decarbonisation and sustainability, and underpinning that, the operating system around principally collaboration and partnering in mining, which I think we believe are 3 critical characteristics to the mining industry to build both economic and societal capital. So a welcome to the panel. We've some esteemed guests here, which is fantastic. Mike Wundenberg, the Vice President of Operational Technology and Business Improvement at Newmont, Ricus Grimbeek, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Trevali Mining, Jayde Webb, the Practice Lead Mining Technology at South 32, and Ian Gebbie, the Vice President of Electrical Control and Instrument Engineering. So a terrific mix between practice leaders, senior executives and service providers into mining. So I'll just pivot and first of all talk around the topic of digitalisation and how we develop and run, I guess, productive and efficient, low-impact operations, and importantly, safely. So I'll ask Ricus first of all. Ricus, it seems that most companies now have a digital transformation agenda. It's a boardroom concern. And you've now worked in large operations with South 32 BHP and also smaller operations. So how, from your perspective, does digital transformation sit as a priority with your executive at the board of Trevali, and how does that translate into investment decisions?
Thank you, David, and thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, it's a good question. You know, it's one of those things that it's been talked about for the last, I'd say, close on 10 years, but the focus is becoming a lot sharper as to what it really means to integrate digital into our businesses. I think as an industry, we've had a couple of misses where we were not able to really translate investment into real performance in the field. I think what's become clear, and I see this in the boardroom, I see this in the field, is that digital so to integrate digital into the way we do work. It's actually a total transformation of how we do work day to day. And I look at one thing in mining, and I'm known for saying some things that make people sit up straight. But the one thing I know about mining is that we've always looked at planning as a bit of a rough guidance. And the reality is, if you want to get the most out of digital, you've got to shift that whole thinking to where planning and scheduling of work, designing of work, and then executing your plans are absolutely paramount. This is only possible now with the digital tools that we are seeing in the field, because you can start visualizing workplaces. You can use edge technology to give you feedback on where equipment is. You can track and trace deliveries underground. And also from a safety perspective, I think you mentioned safety. It's something that in our boardroom we talk a lot about. We're creating a platform that we see more as mining as a service for the future, because we can talk about that as a whole different, more strategic view where I think mining as a service is something that will happen in the future, and a lot of that's got to do with nationalization of mines, the geopolitical issues that we have to deal with, the feeling that communities are not getting their fair share of mining profits. I think that whole issue of mining as a service will become a big thing. But the other one that's really important in our boardroom is safety, and we've always looked at safety as the core thing that we have to deliver. And we don't look at safety as something that you continuously improve. We actually look at it from an angle where we say you must be able to guarantee people's safety today, not tomorrow, not the day after, but today. And what is it that we're going to do today to make sure that I can guarantee that no one's going to get hurt at work? And again, this becomes possible when you start thinking with digital as a core of your planning, and couple that with better design of work, better execution of plans, training, the visualization, and some of the tools that we're currently using on the safety side is quite revolutionary, that I think will really shift this industry over the next couple of decades.
Okay, terrific. So you're looking very much digital to promote some leading indicators for you around, of course, getting ahead from a planning, but also making sure you're executing against it, and importantly, people's safety, which is fantastic and very true. I think if I can just step back a little bit and open it up to everyone else, what does, I guess, first of all, Mike, if you could perhaps have a attempt at this. It's a fairly broad question, but what does digital mining mean to you in terms of progressing some of those key agenda items that we spoke of?
Yeah, thanks, David. And again, thanks for the opportunity to join the panel. Look, to me, it's really around data. And I think as we're going down the digital journey, the importance of data, of sensors, connectivity. I think there's a lot of things that are coming out of the digital focus that we need in place to drive the business. And I think, again, the use of data and how we manage it, how we use that information, and connectivity. I mean, we can think about or assume that that's all in place, but it's not really until you get focused on these things you actually understand that there are some gaps.
Yep, no, perfect. And Jayde, from your perspective at South 32, and in terms of a practice leader, how is digital mining really enabling you to improve underground operations?
As a mining engineer, to me, the digital mine is what Ricus talked about, integrating physical and digital technologies. We can see it being enabled by improved, technical variety and reduced cost of communication networks and storage and processing. So when we start with a greenfields mine, we've got that potential to change the way that we work and redefine the roles that Ricus talked about in the way we perform that work in a mine day to day. So really challenging ourselves to improve safety for people and the communities that we're working in, or to lift our performance, de-risking our operations, and also minimising impact to the environment. And it's our obligation to do that as stewards of our resource.
Yeah, great point. The last point about de-risking the impact of the environment, low impact mining, of course, rapid mining is becoming a much more relevant topic. And in that, I guess, Ian, as a service provider into mining, what does digital mining mean for you in terms of your capital developments and projects, and then obviously handing over into operations?
So as an engineering house, there are two aspects for us. One is the digital tools that we're using as part of the design process that can be handed over to the clients. And then the other one is the operational side and what digital mining means for the mine itself. To me, the end goal of digitization down the road is to see less people on the work face, and all the technologies that enable that. And our journey from a design point of view in the mining space is to enable those network designs that will enable that data flow and that data collection to unlock that. The conversations we're having offline in terms of where you're going with AI, I think we're starting on the journey now by setting up the systems to gather that and the quantums of data that we need to enable that. But as an engineering house, we've been using digital tools for quite a while, but they're becoming mainstream now. Everything that we're doing will have a 3D model in it. We model all our wiring systems from a control point of view, instrumentation point of view. And we'd like to be seeing that we can hand that over to our clients down the line.
Yeah, no, good. You actually made a comment when we had a discussion earlier about I led you to a point about the concept of mine as a service, and I'll ask yourself and also Ricus, because I got two quite different responses to that. Your perspective of mine as a service, I think you've got a much more pragmatic view initially, and then I'll pivot to Ricus and ask Ricus's point of view.
So straight away I said, we can't lose focus that mining is about getting real rocks out of the ground and getting it turned into a real mineral, into a real metal. So for me, mining can't really be seen as a service and shouldn't be. We've got real stuff to do. But from our point of view, as a service provider to mining, yes, digitization is much more relevant in terms of the offerings that we can have. And I think mines can become consumers of a lot more services virtually and gain benefit from that. But, I'm very scared of all these conversations around digitization. We lose focus of what we're really trying to achieve here. Still got to get real rock and minerals out of the ground and convert those into real metals. Yeah,
no, fair point. I think the interesting, you said miners can be consumers of services. Ricus, I think also there's the opportunity for miners to be made commercial, their capability and their core differentiators, which I think leads us to our discussion that we had.
I totally believe that mining as a service on a platform will definitely happen in the future. We can sit here and maybe not agree about that, but I don't care. We'll see what the future holds. The reality is we've got to think about mining not as traditional miners would think of mining. I totally agree that it is about taking rocks out, and that's what we do. We take rocks out, we crush them, we beneficiate them, and we need to do that more effectively. When I think of mining as a service, there are a couple of angles to that. Firstly, at the moment, a mine is normally started because a mining company or a bank is willing to put a lot of capital up front to build the shaft, to build a plant, and then you reap the benefits later on, because these are long dated, big capital investments with payback at the back end. And so, what you see is the disagreement and the discontent we have in communities and also governments that struggle with the fact that after a big investment of a couple of $100 million or $1 billion in later years, they see big profits and then they want to share in those profits. And communities and governments sometimes feel that they don't get enough out of the resources that's in their ground. So if mining is provided as a service, And that is so when you look at it from a different angle and say, if there are a bunch of companies that work together to provide mining as a service, to take the rocks out of the ground, to assist countries and governments to get the resources out, and they participate in the big capital investments, the countries and the communities in the big capital investment, then there would be a fairer share later on, and you won't have a lot of the issues that we're currently dealing with nationalization of mines and so on. So that's the angle I'm looking at. It's much more strategic than just taking rocks out, but it's something that I believe will happen in the future, because there's a disproportionate sharing of profits that is seen in long-dated capital invested projects. The other angle is that I think that we've seen this with digital systems, with automation, with AI. It starts with expert systems, and it starts with the knowledge that we have on how to do basic things that we've learned for over decades. I've been in this business 30 years. And we've learned certain things, and we've got certain expert abilities to look at data and to make a judgment, and then to come to some conclusion and information that can then be used. And a computer can't do that. So it's what we need to do is train computers to be able to do that, train systems, to train AI to be able to learn from experts. And that's where I think there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for mining companies to think about how they partner with service providers, so that we can provide the services to other companies who want to use that. And I use the guarantee safety bits as a great example, because we believe we have a very innovative way of guaranteeing people's safety underground, of doing investigations, of doing site inspections using digital tools. And that then provides an opportunity for us to build a product that can then be utilized. So people can buy that service off a platform that is provided by an ecosystem of partners, not just one company, but we can sell that into the expertise into that system. So I look at it from two different angles. One is much more strategic, long-term. It's more around the nationalization of resources. And the other one is a lot more local. It is the expertise that some companies, some individuals, and some groupings in companies have that can be monetized for a mining company.
Fantastic. I guess you're absolutely right. We have two ends of the spectrum there. But I'll have to get you on our books. I think Ricus, that was our playbook. I think that's a terrific responses, gentlemen. Thank you. If I can just change the topic to ROI, and Mike, you're the author of Newmont's very successful Full Potential program. How have you seen that get established in the context of digital mining, if you like, digital projects? And what sort of ROI have you seen, whereabouts, I guess, in the spectrum of ROI have you seen that present in structural cost takeout, productivity gains, etc.? Where's the success been?
Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. I think from an improvement perspective, we with the Full Potential program, which we had running for a few years, really focused on operational improvements, obviously, and then we were looking at and hearing a lot about digital. And so a few years ago, we conducted what we call digital assessments, and really to understand where we thought those opportunities were, and really to line up in terms of what the priorities were for our business. So we landed on 6 elements, which we internally called the critical few. One of those was advanced process control, as an example, automation, analytics, connected worker or workforce enablement, and a couple of others. But for us, it was more around centrally aligning around what the priorities are, and to your point around investment, was where are we going to invest, and what's the expected outcome of that investment, and the value that it's going to deliver. So that's the approach we took. We've seen excellent results. If you look at, say, something like advanced process control, to go through and do a deep dive on that in 2 things. One is, where are the opportunities today, but where are we going to go long term? Where's the strategy for that? And it's not, we've got great people working across all our operations, but we also need to have some center-led guidance and direction around what the business is going to do and where we want to end up. So to Ricus's point, where would we like to see ourselves? So that's the approach we took. Advanced process control was a big one for us, and what we call also the support hubs, where we centralised asset health and some of those other traditional things. But again, rather than every operation trying to implement that themselves, let's have a coordinated approach, centrally driven.
Yep. So I think that's interesting. I mean, you mentioned APC and so forth, and I guess it's, as we see often, it's how do you start to get a string formed? You can have those localized benefits. It's how you start to actually get the string along the value chain formed to really scale those benefits. And like you said, having that centralized capability and starting to franchise that out, I guess, to your other sites. And Jayde, if I can ask you, you've been involved now in I guess, particularly in underground practice and introducing technologies in underground practice. Where have you seen, your ability to deliver, if you like, cost benefits, operational improvements, productivity improvements from an EBITDA in relation to digital?
Look, I don't think there's anything more important than fundamentally getting the understanding of your ore body right in the first place. Yep. And that would lead into your ability to leverage that advanced process control as well. So if I think about why, with a reduced energy focus, we know that the proportion of energy in the comminution process is really high. So I'd have to say that investigating any options of one or a combination of ore sensing and sorting with advanced processing control would have to have a really big impact. And so South32 is investing in a number of areas across the business to realise that value.
So all body of knowledge, comminution and areas of that nature, obviously they seem to be the big consistent topics, aren't they? It's where the waste can be can be managed at its most upstream, I guess, as opposed to moving it downstream. And you've been heavily involved now, I guess, in a number of initiatives. And I guess if I ask the question around automation, particularly underground, it's a big lever, you like, and in terms of driving cost, productivity and safety across multiple industries and sectors, really. But what are South32's plans toward greater automation in this area?
Look, there's so many different areas that need to come together. We've talked about these cross skills, cross teams. The problems are so much more complex. We need to have these people that can communicate between all of these different technical and trade and technology disciplines to come together and work in a more collaborative way to solve the challenges. And, if I think about back to, I did my undergraduate thesis on quantifying the value of mining technologies where they were in the late 90s, and that was about productivity uplift from teleremoting stopes to line of sight bogging, so and smaller technologies as well. But so we've seen and made significant improvements in the safety of the way that we're mining large scale mechanised mines in the past 20 years, and we're just at the beginning of the next cycle of change. In automation, we've moved these people out of line of sight remoting and stopes. We've moved them onto the levels. We've moved them onto the level above or onto surface control rooms, and then we'll have the ability to move them off the mine site by connecting all of these pieces and solving the gaps.
Yep, great. I think that leads me to another question around remote operations and how digitalisation is really helping those operations and remote operations. And I might ask Mike on this first of all. So where are you seeing value, and what's the overriding strategy around how you're starting to develop up, as most people are, an integrated operating strategy and implementing that through remote operations?
Yeah, I think for us, like many, it's very difficult to get the very best people in each job at every site, right? So one of the things that we've looked at is more around when we're looking at some sort of let's talk HME or mobile fleet. Rather than looking at site by site, treat it as one large fleet deployed at multiple sites, as an example, and really taking that more of a common and consistent view to the way that we approach things. Yeah. I think has been important. I think the real important part of these support hubs or operating centres is the people side, right, and the whole change piece of it. And it's so important to really be clear around the centres there to support the operations be as good as they can be every day, right? And I think that's a big part of that as well. So.
Yeah, look, I think that leads us to probably discussions a bit later around collaboration and and how we work from a teaming point of view and growth mindsets and so forth. So really good points, obviously, and we will talk about the people side of it. I'll just finish off around the digital frame if I can, and perhaps Ian, there's a lot of talk around, and this is coming back to your wheelhouse around the edge area and instrumentation control, automation, and so forth, but also taking that up into edge. And Mike mentioned, how do we start to understand analogous operations between sites? How do we federate learning per se, and how do we franchise that out? How have you, or how has DRA, I guess, embraced the world of cloud, or hybrid cloud, as we would call it, in terms of working not just at edge, but also starting to elevate that information up across your organisations to better understand, the performance of plants, performance from a design construction perspective, and your services into mining. And I guess one other point, because I did note something you mentioned about what are the perils of cloud as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the perils first. You always need to know where your cloud is. There are a whole lot of issues around where your data resides and how you get access to it when things do go wrong. We've had network failures down in our part of the world. I think this time last year when both deep sea cables went down. So I do believe there's a mixture of cloud and prem, but there's certainly, cloud for us has unlocked the way we engineer. We have offices around the world. We share most of our data in some form of cloud. And that makes data accessible to teams on sites, in our offices as well. The collaboration has really stepped up a notch. A lot of our prem systems are big database systems that we're using as design tools, and their latency becomes very, very important to us on how quickly we can turn around information. Sorry, I'm just seeing questions popping up and slightly distracted. But we do see from a service point of view, remote access to multiple clients and a client's multiple sites is a reality for us. And then being able to see that information, publish it on a cloud, security is a big deal. And then being able to analyze that, and that process has already started, and it's quite far down the line. We're busy doing that in a few operations at the moment.
Yep, terrific. I guess, and what I guess a summary, but I think a really, really critical facet that I think brings together a lot of the discussions we've had around, APC, automation, the changing operating models, and with those changing operating models, changes in processes and changing in the flow of data, if you like, across multiple sites. So, Mike, if I can, sorry, just to pivot back to yourself, views on data security at scale. And, I think from our point of view, it's a fundamental and critical challenge. And also we see it now more consistently, the impact. How has Newmont started to introduce a strategy, not just at IT, of course, but through your OT environment for data security?
Yeah, I think, as we've grown in the digital space and really focused on OT, that's certainly been a huge area that we want to focus on, and really taking a similar view of what we've done with IT, which is bringing in those controls and making sure it is secure. And that's the way we've got to treat it. And I think that's why, with some of the technologies deployed, years ago, people would go off and buy a system and put it in, and someone would someone locally on site would manage that. This is all just so much more extreme now that you've got to take the same approach with IT.
Yeah, or dial in or do something.
Yeah.
No, it is. Sorry. I guess, Ian, have you got a comment there? Have you?
No, it just brings back a few memories. When we used to dial into sites, that's definitely a thing of the past. We get into most of the sites now through secure channels, but from wherever you are. But I had to bring back a few old memories there.
Very good. All right. What I will start to talk about, and Mike leaned into it earlier, is around workforce, culture, collaboration. I think which are really central to the future success of mining, not just in an operation, but attracting the workforce of the future. there's rightly so, a significant focus now on diversity and creating inclusive cultures. And as Jayde talked about earlier, about cross-skilled teams and people with growth mindsets and the right tools. So, Jayde, you've been heavily involved now with South 32, I think, as a key member of is it the Electric Mine Consortium. And I think, if I could just post this sort of position, there's an often said thing, we can go fast alone, but we go far together. So in terms of the consortium that you've been involved in, how's the working in collaboration with other miners and the met sector help in the co-envisioning of the electric mine or electrified mine and creating those pathways toward decarbonisation?
Look, I guess we're all aligned collectively on the same goals and solving those technical challenges. So the collaboration has been just fantastic with everybody in fast tracking our learning through the collaboration in that consortium. And we started in the area of light vehicles. It's a simple area to consider, but we thought it was an important area to tackle first as a part of the bigger vision. So, the consortium members are, when they're collaborating, and we are, just simply learning faster with these small companies and figuring out ways to adopt and solve these challenges. So it's a mindset change.
Yep, and you found obviously the benefit of working in a consortium in terms of, I think, as we spoke about, the ability to start to accelerate that, if you like, transition, or at least the ideation as well.
Yeah, and I guess in what's otherwise considered a competitive environment, those collaboration benefits of suppliers and the mining companies has really been fantastic. So tackling those aligned ambitions between everybody to make the transition.
And how do you manage the assimilation of those things? Because obviously there's various work streams or tracks. What's the way that you've managed to, within South 32 or within the Electrified Mine Consortium, actually manage to create an assimilation and the next point to move forward on?
I guess we had to start with common goals to work on accelerating that progress towards a common goal of fully electrified, zero carbon and zero type diesel particulate mines. So through that active participation to start some trials. So we divided the streams of work and they were really designed to a bunch of goals to solve those challenges, and they're resolving the technology choices, shaping that supplier ecosystem, influencing the policymakers, and ultimately communicating that business case. So it was really it was a key reason for South 32 to join the consortium. It was aligned with our company goals and to really accelerate that agenda.
Yeah, perfect. So that's, I guess, all coming back to the notion of improving the brand or continuing to improve the brand of mining, but also working across your stakeholder community as well, which is really important. And I think that you also touched on change. I think, I think Peter Drucker said, change eats strategy for breakfast. So, well, I'll just ask Ricus, in an organisational context, what role does change and innovation and speed and the blend of those things have on your approach from a digital adoption standpoint?
I think, so we one of the biggest challenges I heard someone said earlier was, Mike, that it's all about data. It is about data, but it's actually about people consuming the data, and also people not being scared of the data. Also, we sit with very old traditional org structures in our businesses, very, very driven through normal legal appointments and decision-making points that are very clearly defined in legal terms, but not necessarily, from a new availability and visibility of data. So, you need a world where the workforce embrace this whole shift. We need to work with legislators, because if you move and if you look at what we're doing with our Rospina expansion project, the centralized control center where a lot of decision making will happen there, that's a very big shift away from the supervisor in the field having the last call on what needs to be done in the field. So there's that. How do you create the connectivity, the visibility, and also the mindset where people understand that data is important, and I need to make data informed decisions, not what use my experience on what I think needs to happen next if I can't execute my plan. So I think that's a very important point. The other one is, and this we find this a lot with our unions, and I totally understand where they're coming from. There's a scaredness, a worry about, this is all going to take away their jobs. We recently, not recently, 2 years ago, implemented the first underground scoop, remote scoop, and we started by doing it remotely. Then we started doing it from surface, and next thing is we're teaching it to do it by itself. Mm-hmm. So people look at that and say, "See, oh goodness, I'm going to lose my job." And what happens if the system starts managing a lot of these things? You don't have people with jobs anymore. So we believe that, for example, a lot of the conversation with the union is that digital and the new way of mining is actually, it's not if it's going to happen, it's happening right now. And it's really important to engage very, very early on. And so I've got this saying that the workforce of the future is my current workforce retrained.
Yeah.
And we've got to find a way to engage people in understanding digital, because we've got people that have been working for us in the industry for 40 years. I've got someone that must be with 45 years of experience. In these, he now needs to adopt some digital tools, and for a lot of them, they don't really even have mobile phones. So it's hard for them to suddenly step into this world. So we've got to find a way to take people along, engage from the start, take away the scary, this is going to cost me a job. And the other thing is also the legislators, a lot of the thinking around, can you do remote inspections? So is that a possibility? And can you, or do you really have to send someone there to go and do the sampling? Can you do this remotely? And the whole structure of the miner, the team, the supervisor, who does what, especially in a new world where you've got operating centers that direct work. So I think there's a whole myriad of things that we've got to think about and that we've got to work on to make this work in the longer term. And people is key to it. People will be key to this. Doesn't matter how you look at this. Data will be an input. Systems will be an input, but people will make it work.
Yeah, no, perfect. I think there's a few interesting things. Obviously, you said there in mentioning the notion of digital literacy. I think was Jayde's term a little bit earlier. Is very important to start to understand that digital literacy is going to be with us. The fact that you mentioned that about skills, and we call it a shift from white collar to blue, from the white collar and blue collar to new collar, because I think a lot of if you like, the hard skills that we have only last in our roles for about 4 to 5 years now, and it then transitions to these fluid T-shaped sort of capabilities where we have to be obviously capable in one distinct area, but also quite versatile, which I guess leads us to this notion of how do we cross skill and how do we develop the working environments for co-creation and design thinking. And Mike, if I may, just point this question to yourself. This notion of having garages, or this notion of having these sort of design thinking, cross skill, highly agile, highly rapid sort of innovative think tanks that develop and then move into expanding capability. Has Newmont really embraced this, or is this still a work in progress? How have you seen it started to be induced into the way that you work and developing new ways of working?
Yeah, I think we're progressing. I guess I wouldn't say that we're leading, but we're progressing and we're involved. I think, a lot of those types of arrangements. I think first things first, we need to be clear going into that in terms of what we're looking for, right? Because it's very easy to get involved in some of these things that you're working on vital but meaningless outcomes. Yep. And it's a great thing to do, but where would we use it? And I think on particularly, I look at that on the innovation side of things. There's some terrific things out there, but I look at it also if that really came to life, where would we apply that to our business and what would it do for us? So, yep. But no, certainly, and I think to Jay's point earlier, we talking about consortiums a little bit like that as well, in terms of, I think collectively we have the same aspirations that we want to get to, but it's heavily dependent on manufacturers, suppliers. There's a whole range of things that influence that too. So I think, to me, it's about being involved in some of those things, but also being realistic in what you think the conversion rate can be.
Yeah, right. Perfect. So I guess there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which shouldn't be done at all, I think, is what you make. But no, very true. You've got to pick your value areas, and I think we had that discussion yesterday about where the value of data, where is that valuable data, and how do you actually start to move that and integrate it across your business. So fantastic. I think we've sort of hit on the point of collaboration. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'll shift now towards the other bracketed topic, I think, around decarbonisation and this notion of thriving in an increasingly carbon neutral economy, which leads us to electrification and sustainable mining and so forth. So again, Mike, just while I've got you, a critical change, I think, in consideration is more broadly in how mining is investing back into communities and traditional landholders. And Jayde mentioned stakeholders and how that's very important, and stakeholders, of course, including communities and landowners, and the broader stewardship into ESG and so forth. And how has Newmont, I guess, embraced that or internalised that, and how is that starting to manifest in digital programs?
Yeah, I think on the whole ESG side of things, it's absolutely critical and important, and it's just going to continue to grow even more so. I think that what's changing, and not so much just at Newmont but across the board, is the visibility and transparency that's needed, right? And I think that if we're going to go to the market with a target, there's an expectation we're going to deliver that target, and I think that with the targets, there's many levers within that, right? It's not just one single thing that you need to go and do. There's a whole multitude of things that you need to be working on. So I think, but certainly for me, I think it's the transparency and visibility to what's actually taking place, and getting the business aligned that that's an important part of what we do.
Yeah. Yep.
And be taking that as a consideration with investments in a lot of things that we do.
Yep. And are you a believer? There is a lot of discussion around obviously embedding those metrics that are associated with ESG into the senior executives. Of course, their key result areas and their performance. Is that something that Newmont is embracing, or do you believe in that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because it's all about integrity too, right? In terms of you can't just talk about it and not do it. It's an expectation that we will. So, absolutely.
I think you can't talk your way out of a problem you've behaved yourself into. So I think you've got to.
Well, yeah, I've heard that said. Yeah.
So, actually, Ricus, on that point, I know that at Trevali you're quite passionate about the low impact, the stakeholder, the safety and sustainability. So, how do you think mining's performing generally across the board in terms of the agenda around climate sustainability? Where are we at? Is it rhetoric? Is it real? Is it being invested in? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of angles to look at here. I think firstly that there are some really, really top-class players out there that are doing an amazing amount of things that we should be very proud of. But the problem we have is that we are judged by the lowest common denominator, not necessarily those top people only. So I think that's part of what we've got to find a way to clean up the bottom end of town in terms of performance around ESG. Also, I get very excited about the new move towards decarbonized energy, and for maybe different reasons than other people do, because I see circular mining and circular economies becoming a real possibility. Because with green energy, with solar, wind, the cost of energy could actually come down dramatically, and that means that we could be out of any water problems in future, because desalination becomes very cheap. We could also be retreating lower grade stockpiles that we've mined many years ago. We could be retreating tailings, because all those are high energy intensive processes that could totally shift the way that mining's done. Also think that new processing methodologies are being developed. Rapid oxidation leaching, for example, a great example that I think can be totally transform the whole industry. Other thing is quite interesting that I'm seeing, because I've worked in the top end of, not top end down, the big companies, the ones with big balance sheets, and I've now worked in mid-sized companies. I've worked in a smaller, more vulnerable balance sheet organizations. And one of the challenges we have is that things like battery operated vehicles will be something of the future. So battery scoops, battery trucks, especially in the underground environment, you'll see that definitely coming in, and you already see some of the mining companies testing that. But the reality is, if you want to make that work, you've got to redesign a mine for that. So if you build a new mine, you've actually got to design it with the new technology in mind.
Yep.
And seeing what it's like to try and get money from banks, it is super hard to come with new technology in a feasibility study. And that makes it very, very hard to get the capital to do these things, especially for the mining companies without the large balance sheets where they can self-fund a lot of these. So I go back to your first question is, how do we clean up the industry? How do we change the perception? I think, that's all part of it. We've got to find ways to get the latest technology in even the smaller ore bodies, the smaller companies, that give them access to capital so that they can implement new technology that is maybe higher risk from a feasibility and a banking point of view.
It's a really good point. I actually, in my ignorance, assumed that would actually be a beneficial part to actually getting feasibility and FID, but it seemed to be a risk, I imagine, which, like you say, does make some sense. So I guess that's something as an industry collectively we've got to overcome and try to drive that longer term investment for the capital development. So, and on capital developments, Ian, I guess from a DRA perspective, is that what you're seeing in terms of if obviously your capital?
Very, very much so. We do a lot of study work from ore body all the way to getting funding raised to start mining, and we've seen that change. Battery power, that's a lot of our studies are how do we use battery, and particularly in the vertical shaft underground environment. That's very current on my team right now, and will be our reality going forward. Smart ventilation is almost a norm. Everywhere we're doing studies or energy efficiency work, it's around, have we measured what's going on underground, changing fans, variable speed drives and fans. That's very is commonplace now, and those benefits are coming through. There's quite a lot of talk in the hydrogen economy, and I can see that change coming already. There's work already started there, and we'll see where that takes us. Battery technology, South African context, PV because of the sun, and mixing that. We don't have a mine that is not investigating and looking at how to change their energy usage and their energy sources, and trying to get a balance there. So very, very current in the marketplace, right across multiple players. And I think as we see the bigger players, to Ricus's point, take that journey, it'll be easier to get the funding. In fact, it will almost become impossible not to get funding without taking that journey. So I do see that change in the industry down the line.
Okay, very good. And Jay, just one quick question before we, I guess, get to the wrap questions. We've only got a couple of minutes, but obviously with your investment, South32's investment in electrification, and in the context of what we're saying, decarbonisation, energy efficiency, GHG emissions, key processes we've already spoken about. Have you been able to truly measure, I guess, the energy efficiency, GHG emission improvements, and therefore the reduction in carbon equivalents as a result of the programs you've been involved in, or is this still something that is kind of next step for South32?
Yeah, there's still next steps, David. We're investigating at the moment to start trials late this year and next year. So then we'll see those stepwise changes.
Okay, and that is obviously within. Is it ventilation, or is it in the actual equipment itself, or what's the mobile equipment, or where are you sort of focusing on?
I guess my key initiative that I've been working a lot in has been in the Electric Mine Consortium. There's plenty of studies across the business, but if I just consider, the Electric Mine Consortium with the collective resolve to solve these technical challenges so that we can mimic the productivity of a diesel mine and then get those health benefits and emission reductions. There won't be too much to measure there. The emission reduction, if you can put in a battery electric vehicle and displace diesel, it's zero. So there's a big change. I know it's the small end of town, but with the technologies emerging, there's no reason why we shouldn't be trying to electrify.
Yep, and get the balance of the energy in as well as the usage of the energy. Obviously, the green supply is important as well, the scope 2. But no, absolutely. So just thanks very much. I mean, we've only got a short amount of time left. I'll throw out a little bit of a bonus question for each of you if we can, and just a very quick response. If all your current digital mine challenges could somehow be magically solved in an instant, what would be your next horizon that you would want to achieve for your company? And Jayde, while you've got you, if you can have a...
Sure. Look, I was thinking that a greenfield mine is a pretty great magic wand. It's a great opportunity to invest in the future, and I think we all said elements of that. So it's the best opportunity, I think.
That's where you want to be next deployed?
Of course.
Mike, from your point of view?
Yeah, I'd agree with Jayde.
Yep, great. Ricus?
I would love to see that we never have to open up another mine, because we recycle and we retreat the low grade stockpiles we have.
So full circularity is what you're suggesting, yeah? Perfect. And Ian, the final word?
I want to see autonomy underground and full electric mine, no diesel underground would be my dream.
Okay, so greenfield, fully autonomous underground, and actually no mining whatsoever. So some very interesting final closeout answers. Hey, that was terrific. I really appreciate everyone's investment in this over the last couple of days. It's been terrific for me, and I hope for everyone else out there. Some great responses and terrific insights from the panel. So I personally thank you all very much, and hope the audience out there also got as much out of it as I did. So thanks, Ian. Thanks, Ricus. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Jayde.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, David.
DRA Global is a leading international engineering, project delivery and operations management group with an impressive track record spanning more than 3 decades. DRA Global's team of experts drive innovation through world-class consulting services and support clients across multiple sectors to achieve their goals in minerals and metals processing, mining, infrastructure, energy, water, industrial, operations, maintenance and shutdown services.